For the next 2 weeks, we are talking about Nando's, the fast casual chain which is loved for its flavorful and spicy peri-peri chicken. It is ubiquitous in South Africa, where the chain was founded. It's equally ubiquitous in the UK and Australia, where people love it. They're in Malaysia, India, many other countries, including the United States. Now, on our next episode, we're going to track Nando's past and future plans here in the US. But today, I want to talk about origin stories. So we're going to hear from Robbie Brozin about how he quit his corporate day job to build and grow Nando's. He's going to talk about what he thinks is different about Nando's that helped it grow, and we're going to dig into some of his passion projects, which include fighting malaria and championing his home city of Johannesburg, South Africa. So it is time to get spicy with Nando's peri-peri chicken and Robbie Brozin. You're listening to Where We Buy. It's the show where we talk with retail experts and we visit the places where we buy. My name is James Cook, and I research retail and real estate for JLL. So, Robbie Brozin, I am so excited to have you on Where We Buy. So my wife and I were lucky enough to visit South Africa for the first time over this summer. We had a chance to tour the central kitchen of Nando's, which was fantastic. We got to hear more about some of the stuff that you're doing, and I just want to talk all about it. So let's get into it. What's the beginning of your story for you?
Well, I guess the beginning of my story is, I worked for my father, and I really hated it. I think it's always a tough kind of gig to work for your father. I wasn't enjoying that. And I met Fernando at that particular point in time in my career. And we tasted Portuguese flame grilled peri-peri chicken, which was really from a small little outlet that was, very, very humble outlet in a suburb called Rosettenville. And I just said to him, why don't we one day let's take this opportunity to take this chicken to the world, because really nobody had really taken flame grilled chicken to the world, and we just thought that could be quite an interesting opportunity. A lot of Portuguese had come from Portugal into Mozambique, and then Mozambique got independence in 1974. And then a lot of Portuguese came over to Johannesburg, and so they brought the chicken from Mozambique to Johannesburg. But really the origins of our peri-peri is really from Mozambique. And from there, I left my father.
And
Fernando and I decided.
You were working as an accountant for your father's?
No, I was working in basically what they call special projects, which is really around marketing and it's a tough industry. My father was in electronics, Sanyo agency, which is a very tough industry, and it was at that particular point in time, I guess, that I really felt we wanted to develop a brand. I always felt that he was the agent for Sanyo, and really what he was the meat in the middle of a sandwich. You between the Japanese and the retailers, you've got to make your margin in between. And I just felt that any business that I wanted to get into really had to be a brand that we could really define ourselves. And that was really the kind of the early origins of creating a brand. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be able to find passion in the restaurant business or hospitality. And I thought I would do it as a little investment on the side, and that I wouldn't really be actively in the day-to-day. But as we started getting more involved, and as I felt that there was more investment was needed, I started understanding a little bit of the business and really started enjoying the business. But I also then realized how hard it was in hospitality or in restaurant business. And we certainly, Nando's is a fast casual concept. And I just felt that running a restaurant business is really particularly brutal, particularly on the people that are the frontline people. We call the Nandokas, people that work in Nando's, and that's when I realized that really you have to create a business A, with values, with very strong values, and B, with purpose. That you're doing something beyond just selling chicken and chips. You really are doing it where people feel that they in a values-driven business, but also for a much higher purpose. And that was the origins, really.
So you and Fernando, who was your Fernando Duarte, so you were eating at this restaurant Chicken Land,
Yeah,
and you said,
yeah,
"Hey, this peri peri chicken is banging, and we
yeah,
think people will love this." How once
yeah,
you so then you took ownership. How
yeah.
did you start growing? Were you just, how did that happen?
Well, we started growing with a mechanism called joint ventures. So we thought we'd maintain a joint venture, and we started rolling out in South Africa through joint ventures, and then we started franchising the business globally in certain locations, and we've had a whole range of different iterations as we've gone along. So we've tried more or less most models in terms of company-owned, franchise, JV. And that's really how we started. When we really didn't understand the business when we started out. And what you have to understand with the restaurant business is that it's got to be a passion. It really has to be a passion from everybody that's involved in the business. It can't just be from the finances. Then we found a partner called the Enthoven family that we were, and it really was by mistake. One of our guys that worked in our kitchen said, he thinks that, are we looking for capital? And we said, we definitely are. And he said he has a family that he thinks could be shared our values. And we met the father, Dick Enthoven, who was a very, very, he happened to be quite politically motivated, but at the same time highly entrepreneurial. Was very active in South African politics, and very entrepreneurial. And we were lucky to join him. And today, 35 years later, we're still partners with the family. Unfortunately, Dick passed away, as of my father. Like the two influences on my life, the two major influences on my life passed away within, say, my father was about 6 years and Dick about 3 years ago. So, but both had a supreme kind of influence on my life. And as we built the business, so they had different kind of influences. My father was an accountant, so he had a very strong cost influence. He asked about cost, always what's the cost? And Dick was always about what's the value. And the kind of two influences of my life is cost and value. What's the value of something and what's the cost of something? It's two very different kind of approaches.
Okay, I got
Which has
to
been
dig into
fantastic.
that. Okay, let's take an example. Let's say I want to open, a new location for my restaurant. What's the difference between cost and value? How do you look at that in those two prisms?
Well, in certain areas, like for example, if you want to open in a location, let's say a big mall that's a massive kind of branding opportunity, what's the cost? So the cost might be a bit high, but the value of being in there is extreme value. So you say, well, we're going to overextend ourselves with the costs, but the value is that it's going to establish a good brand presence, and there's ultimately will be better value in the longer term. And that's a kind of a different approach. You can have that approach very much when you've got a fair amount of capital behind you. When you're a bit short of capital, it's quite difficult to have a values-based approach. So I've been lucky to kind of navigate between the two at different times. At various times we've had no capital, and at times we've had excess capital. And so it's been an interesting journey. Nearly 38 years now.
Yeah.
38 years actually.
Oh my gosh. So this podcast, we have listeners around the world. In some countries, they know all about Nando's. In other countries, like here in the US where I live, it depends on the city. How would you, and I apologize because I'm sure you're sick of talking about it, but how would you describe the menu at Nando's? Like, what is peri-peri chicken for those who don't know?
Well, peri-peri chicken really is flame grilled chicken that's been basted and marinated. It's been marinated in peri-peri in a basting for 24 hours, and then marinated to your choice of lemon and herb, mild, hot or extra hot peri-peri. And so the flavor is all the way down to the bone. It really is a delicious flavor, and it's got a real different taste in that, as opposed to battered chicken, this is very healthy, and we feel that the spice, although you can have it, lemon and herb, which is a very, very low level of heat, is equally delicious. But I particularly like the extra hot with a very strong bite to it.
Yeah.
And so it's very different. And I think what also is very unique about Nando's is the restaurants, the kind of experience that you have at Nando's. we're a very strong people-centric brand. So we believe very strong on the people, and that's the people that make the chicken. So every restaurant around the world is slightly different. All the designs are slightly different. We have incredibly beautiful African art in all the restaurants. We play like Afro-Portuguese music. There's incredibly strong design that we have around the light fittings and the tables and chairs, and the kind of certain pieces in the restaurant are incredibly iconic. And so it's an experience for all senses. It's taste, it's experience, it's what you're hearing, what you're smelling, what you're seeing. It's really is like an overall experience. It's we try and match the flavor, because ultimately it is about the flavor, and the product has to really be the champion. But around that is some really magnificent, artisanal, almost made to order pieces, which is critical to the originality of Nando's.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is for our times right now, where I think a lot of folks are really on a budget. They're kind of uncertain about the economy. It offers a wonderful experience, but it's relatively affordable. It's a counter service, but
Oh, definitely. It's fast casual. So you're having a night out. It's an incredibly experiential. We kind of service, or we've now trialing order at table with new technology. So some of the restaurants are going to be trialing that, and we feel it's a reasonably priced good night out, with good quality food made to order, and delicious. So we put a lot of time and effort into menu configuration, supply chain. There's a lot of effort at the moment going on in on all those disciplines. So what was originally quite a simple business is not that simple these days. As we've grown the brand globally, you need to have certain standards that you maintain, and what we call red threads or peri threads throughout the brand as we've grown through the different locations, different countries. Today we're operating 1,200 restaurants in 23 countries. So it's quite a number.
wow. Wow. And so,
But it's not huge. It's relatively small in American standards.
yeah, well, yeah, but you go to, the UK, for example, or Australia, everybody knows you, and it's like their favorite place.
Yeah. I mean, it's we try and maintain a kind of localization, but at the same time, part of a global brand. You have to localize there's certain nuances that are local, and try and be part of that society, but at the same time, part of adhering to a global brand standard.
Oh, that's interesting. How much do you have to change the menu for each country?
A fair amount, more on the sides than on the chicken, but on the sides we certainly change quite a bit, and we like a bit of flexibility in terms of some of the items on the menu, and that gives it the kind of regional or local kind of flavor.
Yeah. Yeah, don't touch that chicken though. No, no
No,
need
no,
to
no,
change that
no,
recipe. Oh
no,
my
we're not going to
gosh.
change that.
Yes. So
And the sauces are very much, we do trial new sauces and new flavors now and again, but the core is the core.
gotcha. Gotcha. What was it? Oh my gosh. So I ate a couple times when I was in South Africa because I liked it so much. And I've eaten here in the US too. There was a side in South Africa. Oh my gosh. I'm blanking. And it's kind of like it looks like what in the US you might call mashed potatoes, but it's not. It's kind
Yeah,
of
it's like pup. We call it pup,
pup.
which is like a mini meal, which is like it's almost like a mash, but it's a local. That's one of the local, and we have a delicious gravy over the pup, which is like a mini meal. It's a very much a local staple.
It was
But it's
I really liked
delicious.
it.
It's delicious.
The flavor of the sauce, the gravy on top.
Yeah,
Oh,
the gravy on top is delicious.
so good.
I agree with you. And the pub is very. It's not. It's delicious. Not very good for the diet, but it's a
Yeah.
delicious little extravagance.
Well, I mean, it's all relative. I mean, everything at
A
Nando's
small
is,
portion is fine.
yeah, and Nando's is certainly healthier than, deep fried
Much
breaded
healthier. Yeah,
chicken or something.
yeah, yeah. Now we recommend it on a lot of diets for health, for health fanatics and fitness trainers, and we're often right up there with, you know, what you should eat when you want to maintain a certain diet or you want to, on a certain regiment. We certainly right up there.
Yeah. So one of the things also that I think is remarkable about Nando's is um the workers that work in the restaurant, the frontline workers. Tell me a little bit about how Nando's does things differently with the people that work in the restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fundamental, as I mentioned a bit earlier, how tough the restaurant business is, and so we really have to honor our frontline people. And so very early on, we came up with the mantra of it's the people that make the chicken. Okay, and so we've been very very focused on how we people orientated in putting people first in almost every discipline that we do. And that, you know, we have a very simple formula. It's like happy people makes happy customers, makes a happy bank manager. You know, it's not a very complicated formula. And often one says that the customer is king, and obviously the customer or queen. It's very very important that you treat your customers with absolute dignity and respect. But at the same time, you have to treat our frontline people. We have to treat our frontline people with equal dignity. And often that gets lost as the chains get bigger. You start losing that kind of people-centric philosophy. And as in times in Nando's, in obviously our 38 years, we've had times where we've waned on some of that kind of focus, and times that we've been quite, you know, focused on it. And every time we've waned, we've felt the impact of that. And so for us, it's very clear. I mean, strongly people-centric. You know, and we have like a very clear philosophy. It's about having fun and making money. I think that's about so. Nando's is about having fun and making money. Change the way the world thinks about chicken, and then changing people's lives one chicken at a time. Okay, and we take that very very seriously. So the having fun and making money part is also critical, because it's not making money and having fun. You know, so a lot of the times money is what you're chasing, and we don't do that. Obviously, we're a commercial business. You have to make money, but we believe that if you can get to a point where you really having fun in the business and the money is coming because you're having fun, it's very much a sweet spot to be able to be in. Change the way the world thinks about chicken is very much about that. When we started out, nobody knew peri-peri chicken, flame grilled chicken. Nobody knew. It was all about deep fried and you know, kind of a very different chicken. So we had to start slowly getting people to understand what our kind of core is. And then changing people's lives is really the essence and the purpose of what we're doing. And one chicken at a time talks about that there's no silver bullet for that. It's not something that you can do and automatically think, oh, well, we're changing lives, you know, overnight. It's not, it doesn't happen. But we've been relentless at our kind of focus on how do we change lives, not only amongst our own people, amongst the Nandokas, people that work within the Nando's, but also the communities that we work with, and then broader society. And I'm very active. So about 12 years ago, I stepped out of the day-to-day of the business. I was the CEO of the business and stepped out of the day-to-day then. For the last 12 years, really trying to find my own personal rhythm. It took me about 2 years to find my own personal rhythm, because it was a very difficult transitional phase for me. We call it the power of giving power away, which was a very difficult transitional phase. And then how do you reinvent yourself? And I'm very happy to say that certainly the last 3 or 4 years, I've really found a kind of sweet spot of how we can really impact society as a whole, but at the same time bring that into the brand, that the brand and the Nandokas of Nando's feel the glow as well, so that ultimately our customers feel the glow as well, and part of the purpose of the business. But you know, they work hand in hand, but don't always sometimes coincide. You know, they can sometimes be. Certainly my personal agenda hasn't always been in the Nando's business. It's been, you know, helping some communities slightly outside, not necessarily on the global brand. So we've been working a lot with fighting malaria, with Goodbye Malaria. So we've been very active with trying to eliminate malaria in Mozambique. And some of the Nando's markets have been deeply engaged, like the UK, Australia, Canada, where South Africa, malaria is not a big issue, and there are other issues that the South African market fund has focused on. So it's purpose comes in many different ways, or many different kind of people put their hand up in different ways to assist.
Okay, so I have two routes I want to go, but first I want to back up because there's one thing I want to get into philanthropy, but I want to ask you one more Nando's question first.
Sure.
I think folks outside of South Africa probably aren't aware of how effectively Nando's used marketing. I guess this was in the 90s? Is that when that?
Yeah, we were founded in 87, and when we started out, I'd love to. I can post rationalize very easily how we developed the brand and how we used advertising, and I was actually in lunch today with one of our regional ad guys, John Hunt from Hunter Scorus, that we've been together over 35 years, and I was chatting to him today, funnily enough, and we were talking about how simple marketing was back in the day before social media,
Right.
and there were very distinct like silos that you could do print ad, there was television ad, there was a PR, and when we started, we had no budget, and we were up against the KFCs of the world and some local chains that had like 15 or 20 locations, and we had 1, 2, 3 from the wrong side of town with the one restaurant, and then like the kind of origins were from a slightly humble neighborhood, coming into some of the other neighborhoods, and so people didn't really know us. So we used kind of advertising very effectively to create a position, and particularly in South Africa at the time, politics was a very strong kind of opportunity, and so we were very much a social commentary brand. We commentated very, very clearly on politics. We were very brave, and we took some very strong stances over the political and over some of the political kind of energies that were happening in South Africa at the time, and that created quite a lot of press, and people started understanding the brand, and that was really the kind of the architecture of Nando's being a brand that was originality, that was a brand that was slightly different. It operated outside of the kind of norms, and it felt comfortable for us. It wasn't something that we forced. It was very, very comfortable in how we developed the brand, and so we used marketing very effectively, and we still do to this day. But obviously slightly differently, because there's a very different kind of nuance today. You've got social media, which is very different, and one has to be more cognizant of the fact that as the brand grows globally, so you have to take, you have to understand some of the localization and the impact that can have as a global brand. And it's just it's more nuanced, and it's as much fun. I mean, one just has to be a little bit more circumspect that what you're saying in South Africa could impact the UK.
Yeah.
And we learned that very early on with South Africa and Zimbabwe. We did a campaign that South Africa did the campaign, and really it was a campaign that President Mugabe in Zimbabwe got very grumpy with us, and they threatened to storm some of the Nando's restaurants in Zim, and it got quite. We had people had life-threatening kind of situations, and we just had to withdraw the ad. That's when we realized for the first time that social media that was the first time social media came to play. It was a very early start of social media. We realized the power of social media and a campaign that could affect another market to the detriment of the brand and people's lives. You got to be very careful.
What was from those days, what was your favorite ad or ad campaign that you ran?
Oh, there were so many. I mean, there were some real cheeky campaigns that we did. I love the Nando's kosher ad. We did a little ad for kosher where we just cut the chili. We cut a little edge off the chili. It was a simple little ad, but it was a cheeky little ad, which was, the kind of ads that we did were really, we had no money or no budget for production. We did an incredible campaign with a stand-up comedian called Billy Prince. And he announced President Mandela was just being released, and he did a whole kind of impersonation of President Mandela at the time, and the copy on those ads were just spectacular copy, and it was really kind of we never had budget for production, so it was very cheap to produce and incredibly impactful. So it's, I had many. We did some incredible, so right for the time. We had incredible gut feeling from the agency, very strong, close relationship with the agency, and yeah, that's really where it was born from.
So you mentioned President Mandela being released. So Nando's was coming of age at a time when democracy was coming to South Africa. Do people, as an outsider, you can explain this to me. Do people sort of view, is Nando's a part of that context of the changing, of the country?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly in South Africa, we were always part of a new South Africa, and we always believed in the future of South Africa, and we've always been very much part of the fabric of South Africa. And from the time that President Mandela was released, we've had so many little anecdotal. He loved Nando's. I mean, he used to eat Nando's at banquets. Often when they have a banquet, he would ask for Nando's. We would deliver Nando's to a venue, and I met him on many occasions, and he was a big fan of who we were, what we stood for, and the product. He loved the product. And as South Africa has grown up as a constitutional democracy, so we've been very much part of that kind of fabric. And in fact, our latest campaign, which was launched a couple of weeks ago, is really or the kind of foundation of that campaign is called "Oh, What a Place," and it talks to "Oh, what a place" being Nando's, and "Oh, what a place" being South Africa, because South Africa is a very special place, and there's certain things that only Nando's can do, certain things, and from a South African point of view, only in South Africa can that happen. It's almost like crazy. People are like, we often say to ourselves, only in South Africa can that happen. So our latest campaign is actually blending almost the national psyche at the moment into the Nando's brand, and we're very excited about that. I'm very excited. I think that the agency has really found a very great kind of blend between Nando's and it's coming of age for me. Slightly away from the political kind of taking the piss of the political scene into a much more optimistic nation building. It's time to actually build the country now, and we feel very strongly that it's a moment in South Africa for the people to stand up, and actually, we the people. That's our constitution, and for the people to actually weigh in and start fixing the country, and not relying on the politicians, which unfortunately it's been a challenging couple of years with corruption, and it's time for us to actually just move past that kind of period. We've had 10 years of incredible corruption in South Africa, from the political corruption and corporate. It's all kinds of corruption. Obviously, this has been a very difficult time for the people of South Africa, and we just feel it's time for us to be very optimistic, and we feel it in our bones. It's almost like what we can anticipate coming is that there's a new optimism in South Africa, and driven by the people, which is very exciting.
So you stepped away from day-to-day leadership at Nando's. Was Goodbye Malaria, was that your first kind of effort as that was happening?
I think when I stepped out of the day-to-day, I went through a minor depression, to be honest. It's a very difficult thing to do, where, it was after about 25, 26 years. I'm never good on numbers and dates, so you'll excuse me if I'm not exactly perfect on the dates, but I stepped away, and it was really a tough time for me. I didn't quite realize how tough, because the minute you step away and you give power over to someone else or to the organization, you need to step away and allow things to happen. And it's like stepping away from your baby. I mean, my first son was born, and Nando's was born basically at the same time. And for me, it was such the restaurant business, particularly, as I mentioned, you're working hard 7 days a week. it's like 364 days a year. You really are there when people are holidaying. You there, and it's just you're always on. It's just a very, very kind of brutal, but a fantastic lifestyle. And I never wanted to be successful in business, but have a family that was not as functional as the business, so to speak. And so there was a time that I felt I needed to step away. Also, the business had outgrown my kind of skills, and I think it needed a bit of process. And so stepping away, but your phone stops ringing. I mean, it's almost immediate that your phone stops ringing. And as much as you feel, people around you saying, what a brilliant job you've done, that there's a lot that you haven't done right, and there's a lot that you could have done better. And that's when I had really good partners around me. Fernando was incredibly supportive. The Enthovens were incredibly supportive. My family were incredibly supportive. But I certainly went through a bit of a slump, there's no question. And that is when malaria really came into being for me. I started traveling in Mozambique, and I went around with an explorer by the name of Kingsley Holgate, and we started handing out malaria nets. And then I started understanding that malaria is such a big killer in Africa, and that actually it could be eliminated or eradicated. And that it just happened to be that Mozambique was one of the most malaria endemic areas. And I just felt that's the first time I really, truly felt purpose. I really felt that by helping somebody, particularly where there's no branding. So we don't brand malaria as Nando's. It's very hidden under the scenes that Nando's is active with malaria. We don't, most corporates would put, Nando's all over their malaria. With us, it's very gentle because we believe in the cause first and then the brand second. And also we believe deeply that anyone that's engaged with us should feel that same kind of intent for impact. And it's not really about the brand. And it's about the impact that you can make. And so it's a very different approach and a very different kind of philosophy. And I just found that the more I leaned into that, the more I enjoyed it, and the more good I felt about myself, and the more good I felt about every other people around me. And I felt the business started getting better, and I was just more impactful. I felt like the glow around me. And so I got, very active in that. And that was really the start of the kind of understanding what true purpose is in life for yourself, and then how one actually can let that impact your business. So we brought a lot of people to come in from the business to come in and explore with us in Africa, come and spend time on the ground in Mozambique, come and spray, come and do some work, come and feel what true gratitude is, where you impact somebody in their home and you feel that gratitude. It's a remarkable feeling. And you just realize how lucky and how privileged we are living, our lifestyle. But also, you also realize that how privileged and lucky the people are living in the villages in Mozambique. A lot of the times they're much happier than we are, I can tell you, with simple lives, and their kids are smiling and happy and playing with little toys, and are sometimes much happier than our kids sitting on technology, and certainly a lot less complicated. So you realize that there are two kind of worlds out there. It's not all necessarily about assets. And, the more assets you have, sometimes the more worries you've got. And sometimes the villages in Mozambique are happier with less. And you realize that you can truly be happy with less. And I felt that very much as a stimulant for me and my family. My family came with me a few times, and it's had a massive impact on my kids, which has been very powerful.
And so does that fight against malaria continue? I mean, how much progress has been made?
Incredible. I mean, we've been going now for 10 years with an organization called the Global Fund to fight HIV, TB, and malaria, which is based out of Geneva. And our budget now is about $35 million. We started off with zero, with $1 basically, and now $35 million. And we're impacting 4.5 million people in Mozambique. And we will be eliminating malaria in southern Mozambique by the 2030, which is going to be a basic world first, certainly for Mozambique. It'll be a first in Mozambique, and a world first in terms of our kind of philosophy of how we've done it. And we've applied business principles to the fight against malaria in Mozambique. So it's a true public-private academic partnership where you've got everybody involved in this fight. And we've got true malaria warriors that are out in the field. In fact, the guys are out there right now spraying in Mozambique, spraying in insecticide in homes. And it's been an incredibly successful project, headed up by Sherwin Charles, who is today on the board of the Global Fund. He's like become a world expert in malaria. And I mean, who would have figured that he would have joined that? He was running our treasury department at Nando's, and then stepped into this
Wow.
as a full-time job basically about 7 or 8 years ago, probably maybe even a bit longer. And he's done it full-time, and we've supported him and the work and the project, and he supported us, in terms of the impact and sharing and doing because it's all about impact. There's no, if you're not going to do things, and 4.5 million people to be impacting is a huge number, and very few people know that Nando's involvement in that, and we're very proud of that. It's not, because again, you don't have to always plug your brand, but to be part of the first group that's going to eliminate malaria from Mozambique, or certainly from southern Mozambique. Malaria is a very long country, so our target is southern Mozambique, and we're gonna be we're very close to elimination.
Yeah. Is the storm still going on? I hear it in the background.
The storm is, this is a typical Johannesburg high-felt storm. I can close the window if it is bothering you, but it's a beautiful. The lightning and the thunder. It's like and there's a smell. There's a particular smell
right
that comes with the storm.
I'm just happy that the internet has held out throughout our conversation.
Yeah, no, we're very lucky.
Yeah,
I must tell you. Because you can hear the thunder. It's like it comes in brutally here in the afternoons. It's beautiful.
I love it.
Hot in the day, and then you have the storm cool, and then it cools in the evening. It's beautiful, just for a couple of weeks.
So, malaria was a big focus, and then I know now a big focus of yours is just the city of Johannesburg. So let's talk more about that. How did that come about?
So everything tends to come to me at a particular point, and I'm like kind of like minding my own business, and certain challenges come my way, and so I was invited through some of the work that we've been doing over the years to join the biggest university in Johannesburg. Is called the University of Witwatersrand, Wits University, and that's my alma mater. I was an undergraduate there, and I was invited to join the business school, the board of the business school, and one of the big corporates in South Africa, a corporate by the name of Anglo American, which is one of the biggest corporates in South Africa, were headquartered in the inner city of Johannesburg. They basically built Johannesburg. From the 1930s, their headquarters were there. And over the years, as the city started decaying around them, they decided to move to the leafy suburbs of Joburg, which is exactly what Nando's didn't do. So we've stayed in our kind of original premises, not where our original restaurant, but where our original kind of factory was, which is really in a kind of real humble part of Joburg, quite a dodgy part of Joburg, actually, so to speak, called Lorentzville. It's an area that there hasn't been much investment other than the Nando's investment, and now some because we stayed, we about 15 years ago we decided to stay there as opposed to moving out to the northern suburbs, which is the leafy suburbs. So whereas the Anglo American decided that they were leaving, and so they left the city, and so they approached the Wits Business School to come into the inner city and take over lease their space, and that kind of decision came to the board, and through a colleague of mine, Adam Craker, he suggested that Anglo, this is really, Anglo need to be more active in fixing the city. If they want us to move in, they need to be active in cleaning up the city. And so it was mandated to me to contact the Anglo board and share with Anglo, that they should fix the city of Johannesburg. And Anglo American, you've got to understand, is one of those big corporates. In my life, I'd never ever been to Anglo American. It was like going to the headmaster's office, when you were in.
They're mining, is that right?
They're mining, gold mining, and a huge corporate. I mean, crazily, and I mean, it almost sounds unbelievable, but they were the biggest single investors in the New York Stock Exchange. I think in the 1970s or 1980s, they were huge. It was Anglo American, huge. I mean, it was incredible what the Oppenheimer family, they own De Beers Diamonds, and it's one of the leading mining companies. So, going to visit the headquarters of Anglo American, certainly the new headquarters. I went there about 4 years ago, and I was expecting to come up against this bureaucratic, like this kind of staid bunch of real corporate animals. so to speak. And what I got was a very different kind of reception. And the people actually said to me, well, we'd love to help fix the city of Joburg, but we don't know how to. What would you suggest? And I felt, well, let's just start doing some cool stuff, that really, to fix Joburg, it really going to have to be, it's going to have to be driven by creatives, because Joburg as a city is a city that doesn't have a beautiful mountain like Cape Town. But it's got incredible people, and it's a city about hustlers, and it's always been built by hustlers and entrepreneurs, and it's a mining town. And so we felt very strongly that we should build it from the inside out. That very much the Nando's philosophy in that great brands are built from the inside out. It's not necessarily, and that's the people strategy of Nando's. You can do it with great advertising, but you really do need great people. And so we use that same kind of Nando's philosophy on how do we fix the city. So it's got to be fixed from the inside out. And we said, like, the crazies are going to wake the nation, as opposed to coming with a plan. Joburg was very similar to Detroit. I mean, I believe Detroit's also had like 6 or 7 mayors. We've had corruption, different mayors. So how do you try and fix a city that is just dysfunctional? And so it really appealed to me. And so I got quite active in terms of developing a brand called Josie My Josie, together with a young creative director, Malusi Mhlungu, who was based in New York at the time. He was a South African. He won Best Young Creative in South Africa, got headhunted into Miami, won Best Young Creative in America, and then was based out of New York. And I got hold of him and said, Malu, come home and come and help rebrand the city of your birth. He was born in Soweto. And so he came home and he created the brand Josie My Josie. And we've really started doing it in a way that the kind of core is that we're doing it from the inside out, but also making the invisible visible, because we found that the people that were holding the city together were very much invisible people that were, working with soup kitchens and the homeless and just doing stuff that people never noticed. Nobody saw them. And so we've given them an opportunity to be seen and just brought back hope to people, where in a city where you're not getting hope from the invisibles, you're not getting hope from the kind of government or from the mayor. This is recently that the government and the mayor really started noticing the city, because of the G20 was in South Africa recently.
Right.
And so they suddenly started noticing, about April this year, hey, the city's dysfunctional. We need to start doing something. And I mean, it's been dysfunctional for years, but we work closely with the president, we work closely with the mayor, and it's all about really just all leading it together. So it's a public-private partnership and a strong academic side, because I'm representing Wits Business School, so it's strong academic and for the students. And we're making Johannesburg very much an academic town, which is very exciting. And so Nando's has about 3 locations in the inner city. So, there's no real commercial benefit for Nando's. It's 3, if we get an uptick in terms of the city being safer and cleaner, it's a rising tide is going to lift all boats. It's not necessarily, I haven't got a Nando's kind of focus on this. It's really as a focus as a resident of the city of Johannesburg. And again, it's the coolest thing to be able to fix a city. Where do you get the chance to fix a city like Johannesburg? And the kind of delta, if we don't fix the city, is so damaging to the country and to the economy that we have to fix Joburg. And so for me, it was, again, one of those kind of purposeful projects that I've really jumped into. And very lucky in that, malaria is being very well managed by Sherwin and the team. So it's not like my energy is lost there. Nando's is well run. It's got great leadership now. So, other than me sitting and playing golf all day, which I find, boring, and
yes.
The more golf I play, the worse I am, and less purpose I have in life. So, for me, I'm finding incredible purpose working with the invisibles of the city. So again, this just fits into purpose and values, and that's the essence of Nando's. If like the story of Nando's will really, in a way, be the story of how the city of Joburg can be turned around as well. Because Nando's was born in Johannesburg, and so it's such a relevance for us to fix Johannesburg and at the same time be resonant in and have resonance in Australia or in the US or the UK, but very strong African roots and driven hard by creatives and music and fashion and kind of now we got a very strong kind of AI IT approach of how we're going to be doing the fixing of the city. So it's exciting, and so it's all coming together for me in a particular way, and it's feeding my soul. It's making me feel like I'm finishing the year this year. I've had a very, very hard year in terms of having to drive, because a lot of people are very negative about Johannesburg and very negative about, it's all perception because they haven't visited Johannesburg. So I'm saying, well, come and see what we're doing. And whatever we're doing through the lens of our constitution, which has human dignity at the center of everything we do. So it's really cool to have, do it through a lens of the gift that was given by Mandela to the people of South Africa, is the lens we're using to turn the city around. So that's cool, and I'm loving every minute. And as the challenges are coming at us, and there's some formidable challenges, the team, we've got a really inspired team, and it's certainly stretching my kind of branding and my creativity and my kind of entrepreneurial spirits to the nth degree. The storm's getting very angry right now. So
I heard it. With your focus on the city of Johannesburg, what do you have certain things you want to accomplish, say, in the next year, the next 2 years? Like, what do you focus on?
Yeah, I mean, in the city, I mean, we've got two major projects that we really want to deliver on. One is the homeless. We've got a very clear strategy on the homeless of how we want to use technology. We've got about 65,000 homeless in South Africa, and we want to come up with an incredibly powerful plan for the homeless, which really works with the homeless and works with what we call a road to recovery. So it's not displacing homeless, but it's actually working with homeless and understanding that that human dignity is critical for the homeless, but also there's mental health. So there are a whole range of different kind of issues of why people are homeless. And for me, that's going to be a massive opportunity and a massive challenge over this next year. And I'm hoping by the end of, if I project a year's time, that the kind of fundamental program would be in place, and that the rollout would be a full-on rollout. We also have a very strong transport kind of plan for the city of Johannesburg. With the taxis are quite aggressive in South Africa. Our taxis are like these high ace vans, and so to me, it's again bringing dignity to the taxi drivers and getting the city and the taxi drivers to trust each other is quite a challenge for us. And then at the same time, we want to launch a endowment for creative arts in South Africa, and not necessarily only for Johannesburg. We're going to launch it in Johannesburg, but we want to also have it as a nationwide and a continent-wide kind of initiative, so that young creatives can really be given an opportunity to show their skills in a global environment. And so every project we're looking at we believe is a global. It's thinking very locally, but it's global solutions, which are very inspiring. So, we're looking at it with a very big kind of vision of how we think. For example, the homeless strategy is a strategy we think would work well in Detroit or in Indianapolis, or once we've worked out the kind of tech, and it's all around behavioral change. It's quite an intricate kind of simple but intricate at the moment, because the technology, we need to ensure that the technology works. But the philosophy is all around individualizing the homeless, as opposed to looking at it as a 100 people are homeless and we need to find a solution for the 100. We've got to find a solution for each individual. And we think that we have a tech solution for that.
Are you able to talk more about that? I'm really curious. What's the tech solution?
Well, it's really around behavioral change, and a behavioral change kind of tech that some young guys have developed in Cape Town, in a very kind of humble neighborhood in Cape Town called Mitchell's Plain, and they've worked it around. A lot of the people in their neighborhood were really kind of affected by gangs and affected by kind of rough neighborhoods. And a lot of times people will ask them to come and help clean up certain areas, but not reward them for it. And so they always felt like, well, crime doesn't pay. People kept saying crime doesn't pay, but they said, well, certainly those criminals are driving Ferraris and we're helping you clean this, but we're not getting rewarded for it. So they developed, these young guys have developed like a rewards-based program, and they've done it very much for communities, but we've now flicked it around and asked them just to look at could it work in a homeless kind of environment. So obviously homeless is very different to kind of reward based out of people fixing up certain gardens or people fixing up certain areas. And so they've come up with a mechanism, a tech mechanism, but we've connected them in the inner city with a homeless shelter. They've done incredible work in Hillbrow, which is a very tough kind of suburb in the inner city, probably one of the toughest, certainly the toughest city, toughest neighborhood in Johannesburg. And so we're working with the homeless in the inner city of Hillbrow together with the tech people, and providing it's really around coupons that if people change behavior slightly and get on a certain path, that they get rewarded, and through the coupon that they get, it's like a closed loop, so that your bank account is really through blockchain and through various it's a virtual bank account that you can then use the coupon to buy at soup kitchens, which then rewards the soup kitchens, or to buy at retailers, and even to pay school fees. So, and then you can track and monitor the behavior. And it's we haven't launched it yet, so they're still in the kind of design phase. But if that works, and hopefully by February, March, it will be ready to be rolled out, and then hopefully, my kind of real wish would be by December next year that it's in full flow, and we would have impacted maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people, which would be incredible. Certainly in that like real worst part of the city, which would be fantastic. So for me, that's my kind of real focus for next year. Through Josie do that, and then we also want to celebrate 10 years of working with the Global Fund in Mozambique. We want to bring like some of the best brains that can eliminate malaria from around the world to come to Mozambique. So we've got a lot of projects on the go. We also want to take African music to the world from South Africa. We're busy with a few projects in music and fashion. So there's cool stuff happening from this creative kind of lens to the world, which is very powerful. And I think the kind of essence of our brand is that we are an African brand. We're a Afro-Portuguese brand, and we want to layer that with much more experiential, kind of purposeful projects that you'll feel in America, that you'll start feeling it, you'll start hearing it, but it's going to be done at the highest level of creativity and authenticity, and whoever comes on their journey with us, it's part of the changing and impacting lives. And so, that's my sweet spot. How do we impact and change more lives? But not from a perspective of handing out sandwiches or, that it's not sustainable. The kind of work that we're doing has to be deeply sustainable for the creatives that we're taking along. And therefore, you need to have very high discipline of who you take along with you and the people that are part of the journey with you. It can't just be like a kind of fly-by-night, short-term impact. And that's why the one chicken at a time, but it takes much longer than just, it's not a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of moment. This is deep kind of commitment from everybody that's joining this kind of part of the journey of Nando's now. I think it's a really exciting part, because I think we've got really strong discipline within the business. There's good process, and the business is kind of red threads are beautiful around the world. At the same time, purpose and values are incredibly important, and I think we're starting to get the kind of balance right. So it's probably taken us 38 years to get to the point where I'm starting to feel like it's getting complete, if you know what I mean. That if I really have to exit, or not myself, but Robbie Entove and Fernando, some of the kind of founders, if we exited, that the key thing for me would be that if the founders exited, that the business principles stay in perpetuity to the next generation. We don't want the business to slide down into another corporate kind of organization that isn't driven by real purpose. And we just feel that coming out of Africa, there is a moment that we can do it. I think it is time. It is time for Africa right now. I mean, we really believe very strongly that, we've had 30 years of democracy next year, or 30 years of signing of our constitution next year. And it's time for Africa now it's time for we the people, for the people, the thing with South Africa is that we glowed in the Mandela kind of moments. It was such a beautiful moment. From the depths of such despair with the apartheid regime, and then you have, a peaceful transition. And when I say peaceful, it wasn't as peaceful because a lot of people died in that transitional moment. But coming out, signing a beautiful constitution, it really gave us an opportunity of becoming a nation that was something exceptional. And we've had it tough for 30 years. We haven't quite always behaved the way we should have behaved with the values that Mandela would have been proud of. And it is for the people now to actually reclaim that through our constitution, which is a very simple document, or the preamble to our constitution is very simple, and very relevant and very new, and we feel very strongly that it's a document for the world today. It's human dignity at the center. Treat people the way you would want to be treated, is the kind of core philosophy, and that's kind of philosophy of what Nando stands for. So it's an exciting time for us right now. And as we're opening new restaurants in new territories, or we're expanding more in the kind of countries that we're operating in, for me it's beyond a privilege, because I'm doing the kind of things that are really feeding my soul and really driving a kind of a passion and a deep commitment. But at the same time, everyone that works in the Nando's world is feeling that and feeding that. It's not only feeling, it's feeding and feeling. So we're starting to get some real kind of buy-in and commitment, and it's feeling good, and I think that's a very important balance. You don't only, you want to have fun and make money and change people's lives. So, you it's not always easy to get the balance right. It does sometimes shift, but it feels like we're getting there.
Well, we are out of time. Robbie Brozin. Oh, would you call your title? How do you go by? Do you say, "Oh, I'm the co-founder of Nando"?
I'm co-founder, but
what is
I'm
the
not
title
a title
you use?
I'm just Robbie. Yeah, it doesn't. To me, we're not fussed on titles. But
Robbie Brozin, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
This has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
And I hope to meet you in person one day. I'm looking forward to coming to Indy.
If you like this podcast, do me a favor. Go into the app that you're listening to us right now and give us a rating. Or even better, give us a little review. Maybe just write a single sentence or even a word, one thing that you liked about the show. I am told it helps with people finding out about the show. You can subscribe to Where We Buy on the iPhone podcast app. We're on Spotify. Pretty much wherever you get a podcast, search for Where We Buy, and we are there. We're also on the web at wherewebuy.show. If you've got a specific question about retail, shopping centers, or retail real estate, feel free to connect and message with me on LinkedIn. Just search for James Cook JLL. There's a million James Cooks out there, but only one at JLL that I know of. And our theme music is Run in the Night by the Good Lords under Creative Commons license. All right, that's a wrap.